We're delighted you're listening to us today. And this is Joy Part 2 or Bliss. And we ended last week, which was all about the emotion of joy, where Anirban was going off to get himself a delicious donut.
And delicious it was. A nice glazed one from Greg's.
And what got us really thinking about how when something is really joyful and sparks joy, you don't have to force yourself to do it. You know, we didn't have to force Anirban to go off, leave the house and go get that donut. And we talked about the joy of music or dancing, you know, and most people who love to dance, they don't have to be cajoled onto the dance floor when it brings them joy. Yeah. If I put on my favorite track here in our home, I don't have to grit my teeth and get through it. So joy is just, you never have to have a kind of a heaviness or a pushiness into joy, right?
And really, what we're talking about here is that joy of sitting in silence. Really, we want to get to a place where we have a silent practice where we can do it on a regular basis and get to that place of joy.
And actually, I would even come back from that idea, Anirban, and say, there is this myth that we sit in silence, and many people call this meditation, because we're looking for an end result. And so we're back to the whole productivity and doing model. So I want to feel bliss. Therefore, it's like exercise, right? It's like running. So there's a whole myth again attached to exercise, right?
Oh, yeah.
And we try to myth bust this within our card pack, and we spell exercise with a Z for the zing, for the excitement, for the joy. Because if you're in the gym or you're running or doing whatever physical activity to get your beach body, then you're looking for that end result. Yeah. Okay. It's not about the process. And I think that's where meditation out in the world at the moment has also had bad PR, because people see it as a chore, as something they have to do to get to an end result.
Yes. The end result there being some sort of blissful Zen state,
yes,
right?
Or some form of joy.
Yeah, but that's the myth.
I even noticed that a huge company, Beachbody, have renamed themselves to Body, BODI, because we're now starting to come away from this idea of an end result, okay? Because it's great to have goals, and we've talked about that before in relation to hope. But if you're only doing something for the end result, what about all the time in between, right?
Yeah.
And so we had the Z in exercise, because I said you should move your body in a way that brings you joy. Yeah. So if you hate running, right, or you hate lifting weights, then there's nothing there for you in that.
There's nothing joyful, you know, you grit your teeth and get through it, right?
And you might even end up with your six pack, or you might even end up running your half marathon, your marathon, but you actually won't really enjoy it. And I see this in you know, our local running club here in Ealing. Many people are injured because they push through, they grit through. And I think that sitting in silence, also known as meditation, people see it as a chore, you know, and most people nowadays access meditation via an app or online. And I'm not against that. You know, I'm not here to judge anyone. Anirban and I always say, we are not the experts on you. You know, one thing I've learned after 12 years of coaching is that I sit and I listen, and you're the expert on you. You know all about your life. However, there's so much active doing involved in that process. And I thought it'd be really interesting just to break it down today.
Yeah, just in going into an app, for example, one of the say guided meditation apps or something, it's opening your phone. The act of opening your phone is the act of finding the app, clicking the app. Then there's also the whole factor of selecting which one you're going to do. You get a bit of Netflix
choosing.
Over that indecision of what am I going to then choose
Choosing is a
to
highly
do.
active, you know, it takes a lot of brain work. You know, why do we have the default network? Why do we go to that? Because it's easy.
Default mode network.
Once you go into choice, that has taken up a huge amount of your bandwidth when we have to choose something. And so we have happiness habits, which are also called habits, because you want to try to get to a system where it's automatic, right?
It's
not automatic if you have to go in and choose, okay?
Yeah.
And let's keep going. Then after you choose, then you obviously chosen something, then you have to press play. Then you often set a timer.
Maybe. But then it's also that act of listening. Yes. That is an active thing. Your senses are on, your ears are open, and you have to engage in whatever it is that person is saying.
And, you think of all the words we've used leading up to that, and they all end in ing. And that's like the actions, right? And, my daughter's 10. She's doing all this breaking down of the verbs and, past, present, all of this stuff. And so the ing, and so I was saying, choosing, deciding, opening, clicking, listening. There's an awful lot of activity going on
active
here, right?
Yeah.
And to me, there's so much doing involved in how meditation is done, in the modern world now. And again, if that's working for you, good for you.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't need to listen to this podcast.
Yeah.
No problem. But what I found is a lot of people have come to us and said, it's not working for them.
Yeah.
And I think the secret is in what they're saying. It's not working for me. I always say, listen to your language and it tells you everything you need to know.
Yeah, there the active word is working, where clearly you almost define it as someone else is doing the work for you.
Well, no, I think they're just working themselves too hard. So to me, I see sitting in quietness as resting, as doing nothing.
Well, that's where we're getting to. Yeah,
you finally give yourself permission. Yeah. Like when you listen to a song, okay, yes, you are listening, but there's a permission for that joyfulness. When you just sit on a chair in silence, and if you were just to stop this podcast now and sit where you are, anywhere you can, in silence, and try to bring it back to the least possible thing that you can do.
Yeah. No tech input, nothing.
No input.
Close your eyes. Shut off those senses,
Because what we're doing is, I think that we're so overwhelmed by all the inputs all the time, and we're exhausted. Like when the majority of people that I meet, coaching, and even friends, family, neighbors, mum friends, is they are tired. That is what I hear from the most. They're tired and busy. Okay. And I just think that our energy is so drained. And we've talked about before one of our practices called ACE, which is action creates energy.
Yeah.
And I obviously am a coach and I believe in goals and I believe in doing stuff. But the second way of actually gaining energy is through rest. And, when I first started out, before you joined me, Anirban, in my business, it was all very coaching and very active.
Yeah.
And then I think we had the total aha when we realized it's only when you balance, the yin with the yang, actually. It's only when you balance each side. So the yang, for anyone who doesn't know, is the active doing, pushing forward. And the yin is the restful state. And this comes from Chinese philosophy, right? And so, again, we can go back into ancient Indian philosophy. We're also going to talk to you today a little bit about the ancient Irish philosophies, right? So if we go away from the modern world and we have the wisdom that is, 2,000-3,000 years old.
Ancient wisdom. Yeah.
People rested.
Pre-religious. Yeah.
Rest was normal. And this is pre-electricity.
Yeah.
So you couldn't stay up all night. You couldn't,
no artificial light sources.
All of these things. And so to me, people are so tired and exhausted and they're not resting. And then meditation seems like another thing to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And the reality here is what we call quietize. It's just bringing yourself into a quiet place. That's the way we've called it, actually, Quietize Mór. And the Mór is actually Irish. It's spelled M-O father accent R. And Mór stands for great or large or big.
Yeah.
Am I right? Yep.
And I suppose we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves here in that once I started to connect more and more with my own Irish heritage and my own Irish language, and you've heard me speak on this podcast, Gaelga, you start to see that, this idea of sitting in silence to gain energy and to feel better and in the moment, and the joyfulness of sitting in nature, especially in silence, isn't just exclusively coming from India. We also have this tradition, within Europe, and particularly within the Celtic tradition and within Ireland.
And I'm sure also in other continents, Africa, South America, you name it.
Totally. Whether you're in a cave, whether you're, in a forest. Up in the
mountains, who knows?
And Manchán Mangan did a lovely piece on this where he went into the Cave of the Cats in Roscommon, which is, part of Irish folklore. And I think we're just really starting to rediscover more and more about how the environment and the earth can really help us understand ourselves in a time where we're feeling very lost.
And I certainly had my own journey where I was at a time when I felt lost. And that was when I essentially got fired from my last job. And that was the end of 2017. And I was in a place where I didn't know what to do next. Like I said, I was lost. And if I turn to our feelings cheat sheet, I was in a place where I was very disconnected. I felt very empty. I didn't feel motivation to do anything next. I didn't know. And so I think I went to a place where I had to go deeper inwards. And I literally Googled, learn to meditate. And the thing that connected with me just happened to be the London Meditation Centre, where I learnt the technique of Vedic meditation. And that was with Michael Miller and Gillian Lavender. And that set me on a journey and a path. And that gave me that that time to go inwards. It's the silence. It was, finding my own voice. Not having to listen to the millions of other voices online, not being influenced by influencers, obviously. And really, it was amazing how quickly just, spending 20 minutes a day, twice a day in silence, how it radically changed my thinking.
Another interview I heard Mankun Mangan say that, all of our central core beliefs have been broken down. The church, climate stability, banks, financial stability, every foundation that was solid has gone now. And, when we start to, what do we believe in now? You don't know what to believe in. Who are you in this system, this broken system, right?
Yeah.
And I think the only way to understand who you are or what to do next is awareness. And I think it's amazing that you're sharing your journey here. But I would also like to, for anyone listening, to bring it back a step, because we also don't believe that everyone is going to go off and do, a very set Vedic type of meditation or any of these set meditations out there. And Anirban and I have spent a lot of time figuring out how could we bring people in at the very beginning of this journey. I always said, what's the bridge? What's the bridge between mad, busy, exhausted, overwhelmed, and 20-minute meditation twice a day, which is what you learned? Because there's a big gulf in between.
Yeah,
that
was a big step. And I did what you'd say a lot of meditation, in a very short space of time.
Right. And so to me,
and that wouldn't necessarily be an easy route in for a lot of people.
No. And I think to me, we have this great saying here in London on the tube, mind the gap. And which you don't fall off between the train and the platform. And I think what happens is, again, if you are actually on the platform, okay, and the train of meditation is going by, and it is going by, mindfulness has had so much press here. And so people know it's there, all right. And they might even be doing apps or whatever. And then you have, your crazy busy life. But there's such a gap between the two, because either it just seems completely unrealistic to have to set yourself up to do that long of meditations, or you've tried it and it hasn't worked. And so I wanted to find what's the bridge in between, what's that step. And so then we created this practice that we call the Myfi zone.
Yeah.
And this to me is the halfway house, as it were. And it simply is tuning into yourself, your frequency, your energy, your mind, and your body. So anyone can do that.
Yeah. And the way we tell people to do this, we'll give you a really simple instruction, is to create a space in your house which is free of tech, ideally free of distraction. It's a quiet space for yourself.
And TV as well.
Yeah. It's a quiet space for yourself to sit in silence.
And it can start really, really small. You know, a lot of people have reading nooks or really reading corners in their home. And I often see, you know, people show off their bookshelves and that type of thing. And, you know, even, you know, some of the people that I follow and enjoy, like Reese Witherspoon, they'll have this whole kind of nook that you create. Yeah. And so you might already have that area of the house where you read or, you know, you draw or something that's, you know, that's very engaging and mindful. Mm-hmm. And so that's what you're trying to create. And so to me, I would say to anybody listening, go, I don't think meditation is for me. I've tried, it didn't work. I would say quietness is for everybody. You know, quietness is your birthright. Mm-hmm. Silence is your birthright. Sitting by yourself for a minute or two to recharge, like that's available for everybody.
Yeah.
Anyone
can do it.
You know, if you're alive, you can do that. And knowing that your ancestors did this, you know, all over the world, it's not something Indian at all.
It doesn't have to be some sort of ancient religious type thing. No, it's not. It's like, as you said, it's kind of a human right to be able to do this.
And I think, you know, there's so many books written about sleep and rest and napping and all of these things. And they're all fabulous. But I really do believe that this, you know, anyone could do this right now, you know? Yeah.
You could switch this podcast off, put your phone away, get in that little Myfi zone that I just described and sit in silence. Close your eyes, shut down your senses for just a minute or two.
And to me, the reason that we call it Myfi is it's the opposite of Wi-Fi. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So, you know, we became obsessed a while back with Wi-Fi.
Wi-Fi zones, Wi-Fi hotspots.
Passwords. And like, you know, could you get your, you know, I remember coming in on the tube here where you could eventually get a signal on the tube, and like everything has become being connected. You know, if you're not connected 24/7, if you're not responsive, if you're not posting, you're not a person. And to me, you know, again, I'm not anti any of these things. It's the modern way of connecting and networking. But everything has to have the balance. I go back to the yin and the yang. If your whole life is doing, going, where is the rest? And people say, well, I sleep, but where is the lead into that sleep? You know, you have a sleep routine with your young child often, or even children. And as adults, we don't bother with that. We literally go from sending a very engaging work email or texting back and forth with someone and boom, into bed, and then you've problems sleeping. There is no gentleness, there is no softness, there is no rest in our whole day sometimes. Yeah. And it has huge negative consequences, you know, on our quality of sleep.
Yeah. And actually quality of sleep is a really important one here because interestingly, a meditation practice, a quietized practice significantly improves your sleep quality. And it's been actually researched that it can resolve things like insomnia. The amount of rest you get in just what you call, you know, wakeful rest is the way to sort of put it in another term. It is hugely significant. It can be as powerful as a really good sleep.
Yeah, the brain waves, right, Anirban?
There we go. Yeah. So really what you're doing when you're sitting in stillness and quietness is changing your brain waves. Your brain waves actually change pattern the instant you're silent and your body is still. And really what's happening here is that you're activating your parasympathetic nervous system. It's your rest and digest, restore and renew phase of your body.
And so it's wonderful to have that science. And I think why mindfulness has become so big is it's now, you know, evidence-based. And I love science. Obviously, you know, I have a BSc. That's wonderful in psychology. But I do want to say, if you're listening to this and the science kind of turns you off, you don't need all of these tests and all of these results and all these papers. You can do a scientific experiment on yourself, you know, right? You know, yeah. Test number of 1, okay? You, right? Yeah. And so this is really what I feel why I wanted to have this conversation about joy and meditation and bliss and quietize. Because we have another practice called Easy, EZEE. And this is how you make anything that's good for you a habit.
Yeah. And that's based on the science of habit formation.
Absolutely. But what's really interesting about this, at the end of the last E stands for emotion, and you just check in with how you are actually feeling, right? So I would love you to go away, and if you don't listen to any more of this or you don't take anything more from this, and sit with yourself, with no input from the outside, and sit for a minute or 2 or 5 minutes. It doesn't have to be any more than that. And just see how you feel afterwards. So you might be feeling many different things. You might be feeling joy. You might be feeling bliss. You might be feeling contented. You might just be feeling proud that you did the 5 minutes. You might be feeling curious. You also might be feeling a lot of creative energy. And this is something that I can really relate to. So again, I feel the PR for meditation tends to be calmness, okay? And that might be appealing for some people. But for me personally, I have a very busy creative mind, and I actually quite enjoy my busy creative mind.
Yeah.
And I think David Lynch's masterclass was a real help for me on this. And also there's that book.
You mean Catching the Big Fish?
Yes. And how he sees meditation is, he says it's going fishing. And he's going fishing for really great ideas.
Yeah.
And I just love this because, again, you might not necessarily be all like calm and chilled. Actually, when you sit in silence, lots of things come up. But after a period of time, you notice patterns of your own negative thoughts, and you'll get to understand them, and you'll see your own thinking traps. But also good stuff will surface, and that's your own intuition and your own idea. And there's another guy called John O'Donoghue, which is a very famous Irish writer, and he would call it the great creativity within. And I just think that's so amazing to think that you have all of that inside you, but you will not access it if you are go, busy, 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 busy. You won't, because you haven't given it a chance to come up in you. And if you think of David Lynch and the fishing analogy, your mind is this vast sea, right? And you're not even breaking below the surface, because all you're doing is, I'm going to roll with this analogy now. Let's see if it works. I'm thinking that most of us in the modern world are on like speedboats and jet skis on the surface of the water.
Surface level fishing.
Literally. We're not even fishing. We're just
skimming over the top.
We're traveling over the water, and there's such depth to all of us. And again, this ties into the whole idea of influence culture and what's going on. It's so easy to be pulled along in speed, by the media and by socials. If you don't know what you stand for, there's that amazing line in Hamilton, which is, if you don't know what you stand for, you'll fall for anything. If you stand for nothing, you'll fall for anything. And I'm sure that line in Hamilton the music is taken from a very famous quote. But I think, how do you know what you stand for? How do you know who you are if you never tune into yourself? Yeah.
If you're only ever listening to other voices or other influences, should we say?
Yeah. I mean, how would you know who you are if you never quieten down the noise at some point?
And really, there's no such thing as complete silence. Obviously, if you're out in nature, there's always some background noise. There's the sounds of nature. It can be the elements. It can be wind, rain. It'll be, insects, bees, birds. There's always background noise. Even if you live in a city, there's, background traffic noise, etc.
I was actually going to say, do you remember when we lived in Ireland briefly and my dad was very sick, and there was cattle that came right up to our bungalow?
Oh God.
And you were like, what is that noise?
Yeah. At night time, when you can't see anything, it's pitch black in the country. It's kind of spooky.
Cows chewing.
Yeah, basically.
But I think, again, it's too noisy. I can't do this. And what's really interesting when you just sit is also your tolerance level of things changes. That you're okay just sitting in a kind of, and just being and accepting. You really you really start to accept. And I mean, I live in London and it's like extremely noisy. So yes, when we go into our patio, I can hear nature sounds, but I can also hear builders and cars and everything. But they all just form a kind of a background cacophony of different noises that are like, that's okay with me,
Yeah, to me, it's like a city white noise. It's the noises you always hear when you live in a city. Your
children in your home, all of those things. I live in an apartment block.
Yeah,
it's like
sort of the background door close or something, right?
But there's an acceptance of that, and that's different. That's you detach from that. It's not engagement. So I don't have to listen to that bird's song and decode it. I'm not listening to the thrush to know what that thrush is saying to me. It can fade into the background. And I suppose, unlike a guided meditation, I'm actually listening. What's the next one sentence? What's the next word or whatever? And ultimately, I suppose what I'm thinking about here is responsibility. And this is why I feel so much joy in meditation. I think it is the one part of my life where I have no responsibility.
Yeah.
So I don't have to decode anything. When I'm with my child, I have a huge responsibility to be present for her, to hold space for her, to maybe catch myself from reacting and thinking about what I want to say. When I'm working with a client, it's similar. When I'm writing, when we are planning these, when I'm having meetings about my business, when I'm talking to family, when I'm in family meals, whatever it is, I have a responsibility to show up and be present and be in that room. And I take that responsibility very seriously. When I meditate, it's like the universe is giving me permission to not do anything. Yeah. I have no responsibility to anybody.
It's the best. I say it every day pretty much. I can't wait to meditate. It feels great.
It just to not have to do anything, not have to that awareness, not to have to actually think, okay, right.
Yeah. It's detachment from responsibility. Trust me, it feels amazing.
It is freedom. It's real freedom. And I think, that's what we really wanted to come on here. There is that Light Watkins book, I think we'd said before, Bliss More.
Yeah.
And to me, it is that idea of, I could honestly say if I had a phrase or a word to describe when I sit down, it's like,
that's the sound. It feels amazing. It feels great.
Relief.
It's great. Yeah. Pure,
and people
pure
talk
relief.
about me time and all of that. This is actually it.
And another myth part here we're going to bust for you is that you have to be seated upright and you have to be in some sort of lotus position, looking like a yogi or something. But the truth is you don't have to be. In fact, comfort is the name of the game here. Mm-hmm. You just have to be seated comfortably. You can have cushions around you. You can support yourself. It's all about comfort and feeling that bodily comfort in that space while you're being quiet.
And if you feel cold, you can go get a blanket.
Yeah.
It's not like, I feel like, again, it's not this goal. Okay, set the timer, must do 10 minutes, must do it straight backed, must do it in all this rigidity. You know what? If you do it for 1 minute and you feel cold, get a jumper, a hat and come back and keep going.
Yeah. If anything, these sort of extrasensory distractions are not the way to do it. If you're in a super noisy place, it's not great a place to do it. If you're in a place where you're freezing cold, not great.
Again, comfort is really important. And also, I was just thinking there that sometimes when I'm really wired and tired, and you've not been here actually, and if Annie's gone to bed, I've gone, and turned on the TV and thought, okay, I need distraction now. It's been a really busy day.
You think to yourself, that's me time.
Yeah, Netflix and chill, right? And actually, I've often just turned back off the TV again and realized that's actually not what I need right now. What I need now is complete silence. And the same when I've had a very difficult back and forth with a member of my family or with any kind of triggering emails or text. What you don't need is actually something to distract you. What you need to do, like we've been saying all along this podcast, is to sit with the feeling.
Sit with that discomfort in your mind potentially.
Yeah. And if you get to practice the joyfulness of meditation, the relief, then you will also over time build it up so that you will also be able to sit with the discomfort. First sit with the comfort. First sit with the joy.
Yeah.
Start where it's easy. Don't be giving yourself a really hard task, like I was saying.
Yeah.
Do a minute or two where it's like, oh, I love this. The other thing I think is is that if you have a sense of yourself within, if you open up this kind of, lake or this big creativity within yourself, expansiveness, that piece within you can tap into no matter where you are. So right now I'm sitting on a kitchen table that is unbelievably messy. And I've talked about this before in this podcast. Like, I can enter a room that is just wrecked. My child's bedroom, the kitchen, I can be on the tube that's packed and I can still go into Quietize. Now, I've cultivated that and I've built it up. I didn't start meditating on the tube, by the way, but that inner peace, that ultimately happiness is an inside job, and you train yourself to access that little spark of joy the same way you get the spark of joy off the donut. You take that first bite and you go, that sugary sweetness. Oh yeah. Sticky, sweet, repeat. And I really, really believe that Quietize is a sweetness. And if you are finding it a hard slog, I don't really believe that you're in the right space with this. And I really want to pull you in with us today and go, just change it up. Try what we're saying, because it should really be joyful and easy, and you can't wait to do it.
Now, I know there's been a bit of a trend of monks who have written books and created apps. And it's all great if you're a guy and you haven't got family with kids and you're off, in a temple somewhere
on a mountain retreat,
and you're getting your Zen on, doing your meditation. Brilliant. That's great for you. But the reality is, if you're living in a city, or if you just have a full-time job, or you have a partner, or you have kids, that ain't going to happen. And it's going to be way more challenging to try and bring this quiet time into your life. Not everyone has the luxury of becoming a monk. So, can you do this in your current lifestyle? And the answer is yes, it's totally doable.
I think it's really interesting when we go back to gender again, that the majority of the people I see out there who have become well known are men, right? And then the family thing doesn't come in. And we've talked about emotional labor. I've had some really good chats with mum friends about this. So again, could it be easier for men to access meditation because their minds are not full of emotional labor? If in your home, your child never comes to you you don't do homework with them, or you don't even buy the birthday presents, do the birthday parties, listen to all the 100 million stories about I fell out with Jane and Sarah and then John kicked me. Like, it goes, I know I'm going on, but I really want you to understand the amount of emotional stuff that as a parent has to hold. So as a man, are you holding all that in your minds? Because I don't see those women out there. I don't see best-selling books by mother of three about meditation. I think that's really, really interesting.
Yeah, well, very, very few books. Yeah.
I think it's not the same. And I suppose that's why I feel I've spoken so much on this episode, more than Anirban, because I really feel, as a woman who holds a lot of this in my mind and who's there to kind of make everyone feel good, where is the time for me to feel good? And where can I detach and have that space?
So yes, ask yourself that question. So anyone who has a busy family life, you're a million miles an hour, you've got super busy days, working full time. Where do I have that space? Am I giving myself 5 minutes a day of quiet time? And on the flip side of that, am I giving my partner an equal 5 minutes of time to themselves?
And just to be real about this, what might that look like? Can you leave your partner, husband or wife, alone upstairs in the bedroom for 5 minutes and you bring the kids down? Can you have somebody sit out back in the patio and that's mum's time, but that's dad's time, we leave them alone now? Whatever it is, just think about how can you facilitate each other having a little bit of alone time? Because it's so precious and so valuable. And we're all about men and women coming together here and helping each other out. And again, we say, try it for a week. Give yourselves those 5 minutes each for 1 week and check in with your feelings. You can use our feelings cheat sheet, of course.
And what I discovered when I was in that position where I used the feelings cheat sheet and I discovered I was lost and didn't know where I was going, I had no direction in life. I discovered I was not my job title. I wasn't my status. I wasn't my postcode. I wasn't my car model. I wasn't these material things. I was really a person of nature. I was a human. And that brought me to this place.
It brings you back into your humanity, right? And that we're all interconnected. And, I always have said we're all interconnected across time and place in love. And like we are of nature, we are nature. And this is something that I've really connected with through the language, through Gaeilge, through work from people like Mancon Mangan, as I was saying. And also I found the most beautiful poem, which they now believe is maybe the first Irish words that were ever spoken. It's called Gaeth Mór, which is the Song of Emerging in English. And I think it might be very nice to end on that because it's something I come back to all the time. Gaeth Mór, Ton Trehan, Fuam Mara, Der Grania, Senegal.
And it's so beautiful to end on those soothing Irish sounds that we teach our Quietize Mór students. We found that these sounds are very similar, in fact, to Sanskrit mantras that I was taught as a child. So that's all for this week. Next week, we'll be talking about grief.
It's the feeling of yearning.
Okay, so Daka Hobe. See you next time.
Slán go fóill.